The Burrows of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it.
Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burrows of Berea.
Nody no, 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 nody no, no, notes, nody no, notes from the underground.
Let's get it started.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get it started.
Ha.
I like that first, half-hearted, oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I'm just, I don't want to steal, Rick Carlton's thunder, right? He doesn't do that, oh, yeah. Yeah, so I don't want to steal his thunder. Well, anyhow, folks, welcome back to Notes from the Underground, where we take a microscope to some of Christianity's thornier topics and people. I am your host, Tiziana Mom So Hard Severse, which I'm not actually momming hard at all right now.
You're not, but how do you mom so hard?
I don't. My mother-in-law moms hard. That's what she's doing. Yeah. Thankfully, my mother-in-law stepped in today, and she is like, go to the podcast. She'll take a bottle if she's hungry. Amen.
What did I tell you?
Thank God. Thank God. Thank God for her. So anyhow, to my right, I've got Rick, the Podfather Welch.
I'm getting some
Is
new
that
names.
where we're going?
Podfather, Sarita calls me the OG.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Rick Carter calls me Jelly. I don't know. You call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Hey.
And that's so cliched, but I'm fat, and so please don't call me late for dinner.
We also, for the first time here, right,
Yep.
have Sarita the Edge Edgerton.
Hi, I'm Mom So Hard this morning.
Yeah, you've been momming hard a lot since the birthday party. How you momming so hard today?
Well, I got up and cleaned some softball pants, bleached them, got them white again.
Whew, that's some work.
Did some algebra with some kid, got him ready for that, made sure my husband could get everybody to orthodontist appointments, like directing traffic, basically.
Yes, doing all the unpaid
And then I drove
labor.
45 minutes.
That's right. to get
Yeah,
here.
that's a lot of stuff.
And I did it on 1 cup of coffee.
And
Yeah.
all before 9.
That right
I am
there.
a champ.
That right there is a champion. Oh my goodness.
I am living on the edge. Ha ha. See? Okay.
And as usual, behind the glass, Rocket Man Andy Bishop.
Oh, that reminds me. Whenever we did our last episode on Hebrews, which hasn't been released yet, but it will be this week. So by the time you hear this episode, it'll matter. You did something. You were singing a song. I'm walking on the edge. That would be a great name for your own little thing. Walking on the edge with Sarita the Edge Edgerton. That's pretty good.
The lyric, to be fair, is living on the edge.
I said,
Right.
I was living on the edge.
Oh, is that what you said?
I think she just missaid it in the moment that she was quickly recalling it for a joke.
Who is that band that did that?
Aerosmith.
Oh, that's right.
But we could call it living on the edge.
Yeah, or even just
could.
walking on the edge if you want.
Walking on the edge, yeah.
It's still a good name.
It's still fun. And it's still, you could parody the name of the thing. People do that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want.
Walking on the
turns
edge.
out.
I love it.
I do. That's why I say with Nala, I would do anything for food. That's my dog. So it's okay.
I had a different one. I would do anything for lust. That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
That's
yeah.
for a dude?
Yeah.
Man, you would be surprised how many dishes and laundry I've done. Right?
I tell Dylan, if you want to get me in the mood, go empty the dishwasher. I say it all the time.
I used to tell young men when I would counsel them, I would say, making love starts in the kitchen.
And you know
I've
what?
told them that so many times. It's like, if you would just figure that out, it starts in the kitchen.
We're going to just do what we always do, which is wander off into the weeds. But do you remember that TV show, Dinosaurs from the 90s?
Oh, of course. Not the mama.
Recently, just for fun, because our daughter Aurora is super into dinosaurs. So we watched the first episode of that show. She didn't care, so we didn't watch any more of it. But we watched the first episode. The first episode is the mom is overwhelmed and frustrated and exhausted because she has 2 teenagers and a baby and she's up all night feeding. And the dad is trying to get her in a romantic space. And so the whole episode is him trying to figure all this thing out for her, how to get her. He goes and relearns the mating dance that he learned in their 20s, comes home and performs it. And she's like, get out of here. Sleep in the guest room with that, And then he wakes up in the middle of the night and babies the baby and does the nighttime feed so she can rest. And that's when she's like, "You've never been more attractive."
Yeah, exactly.
So it's such a trope,
It really
But
is.
anyhow, so we're talking about love and marriage and babies. So that's a perfect segue to hop back into our study on the book of Ruth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ruth. Hey, you know what? Can you give me the 30-second,
Yeah, I'm going to catch y'all up.
please?
That's the plan. So we started the book of Ruth a couple of months ago, and we are following the story of a young woman named Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi was married to Elimelech and had 2 sons, Malhon and Chilion.
I
There was
can't
a
hear that word
famine.
without Elimelech.
I know, me
in my
too.
head. I'm so
I know,
sorry.
every time.
I apologize.
Famine in the land of Israel. They bounced down to Moab. Super bad idea. God was not a fan of those folks. There are lots of reasons why. Then the 2 sons die, and the husband dies. And so Naomi's like, "Ugh, I got to go back. I got to go back to Israel because I got nothing here. And I've heard that they've got food there again." The 2 daughters-in-law are like, "We love you. We want to go." And she's like, "Look, I can't do anything for you because I'm not going to be able to have any more children. So you need to get married and find you a man, girl. And I'm not the one." So Orpah, daughter-in-law number 2, is like, "Oh, okay, it's really sad, but I'll go." And she takes off. Ruth's like, "No," and gives what we often recognize as one of the most beautiful statements: "Where you go, I will go. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. And may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates us."
Right.
It's beautiful. Lots of people call that her conversion. I'm not there, but there's arguments against that. We talked about that. So she goes back to Naomi, returns to town, head hung low. She left with plenty in a time of famine and has returned in a time of plenty with nothing but a Moabite, which again was not a bonus.
And it's such a
that wasn't a thumbs up.
Such a God man story.
Oh yeah,
I know. I mean,
I
it's
know.
so it really is.
I know. Ruth walked into a situation where she was a cultural pariah, and she rolled up her sleeves, and her love for Naomi, that Hebrew word chesed, faithfulness. Her faithfulness to Naomi was such that she was like, "What do I got to do?" Right? So they arrive back in, we're now chapter 2. They arrive back into Babylon.
Bethlehem.
What? Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
Blah, 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 blah. And
One of those
Ruth sets out to go find some food. And Naomi says, go out. And she says, "I will go out and see in whose field I may find favor," which we discussed again. She shouldn't have had to do, because God prescribed in Leviticus that they were to leave gleanings on purpose. And because the period of the judges was a time where sometimes it was they were honoring God's law and sometimes they weren't.
Men were doing right in their own eyes. Yep.
We can assume that this was one of those periods of time, and that Boaz happened to be a righteous man despite the culture, just like Ruth happened to be a righteous woman despite the culture. But the culture at the time was still one of great danger. That's why when Boaz is like, "Hey, who that little chickadee out there?" And they're like, "Oh, that's that girl. Come home with Naomi." He goes out to her and he's like, "Stay close to my handmaidens." And then he has to specifically tell his workers not to harm her, i.e. R-word her.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he also says, "Stay close to my people because you will be safe here." And then he even instructs his people to leave her some extra gleanings, which is really thoughtful. So she comes home after being in the field. She's got all this food, an ephah.
Yeah.
And Naomi's like, "What? Where did you glean today? This is rad." And she's like, "Some dude named Boaz." And Naomi starts cooking up a plan because Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. So we're going to start in chapter 3, which the best place for me to start is with the threshing floor. So we're going to read, because I like to just read the text, but I have a little thing here about the threshing floor. So once again, when humanity shifted from being hunter-gatherers to being people who planted fields, that happened almost first in the Levant, which is interesting because I think that lines up with the story of creation. When they left the garden where they walked in faith and just gathered what was there, they suddenly began tilling the land. So in the Levant, which is that area Mesopotamia,
Fertile Crescent.
the Fertile Crescent. Thank you. I'm sitting here. No one can see me using my hands to try and draw a picture of the side of the Mediterranean Ocean. Thank God for Sarita. Anyway, it arose there first. So there were lots of cultures in and around this time that had threshing floors. threshing floors were places of great celebration, and especially in Bethlehem if there had been a famine. And so what happened on the threshing floor, you took the grain, you brought it in, and you started to beat it or winnow it from its chaff, and the wind would carry away the chaff and would leave behind the grain. People were eating, people were drinking, and prostitution was extremely common on the threshing floor, especially in some of these cultures that were surrounding the Israelites, because for a lot of these other cultures, we've talked about this before, Baal, the god of grain.
The god of grain, the
right.
Lord of the flies.
Right. Yeah.
All of the things.
Right. So for these cultures that were surrounding Israel, prostitution on the threshing floor also had an element of worship to it, which ew. But that's a different thing.
It's like a boomtown
Weird.
gold rush. Like it's like going to the Old West whenever they have a gold rush and things are celebrated and everybody's happy, and then the prostitutes come. I mean, that's what they do. Except some of these people were worshiping.
Well, in the New Testament, there were temple prostitutes
all
over the place.
All over the place.
It's not just here.
No.
It's all over the place.
That's right. That's
here
right.
meaning the Old Testament story. You didn't mean like here in Andersonville.
Not in Giraffe
In the
Studio.
studio.
There is no
Well,
prostitution.
Rick just mentioned. Rick just clued us into his night job. So
That's right.
we
I
don't
put
know.
myself
We don't know
through
what
college
kind of
stripping.
agreement him and Andy have.
Most
Anyway.
people are so surprised. And they're also surprised to find out that I didn't go to college. I went to trade school. That's what I did.
I went to trade school. Yeah. But anyhow, so the threshing floor is a place of celebration. It's a place of merriment. It's a place of drunkenness. And then because it is also a place that is vulnerable to thievery, everybody spends the night there. That's common. They would stay there to protect the harvest. And because this was a period of the Judges where we're assuming things had taken a moral downturn based on how Naomi and Ruth had to navigate gleanings, which they shouldn't have had to do, we can also assume this was a time where stealing of the grain would have been a popular behavior. So they're all going to spend the night there. They're all going to get a little wasted. They're all going to keep an eye on the grain. They're going to party. They're going to celebrate. So that's what we're doing in the threshing floor. And Hosea 9, actually, I'm going to read Hosea 9:1. It says, "Do not rejoice, O Israel. Do not exult as other nations do. For you have played the whore, departing from your God. You have loved a prostitute's pay on all threshing floors."
There you go.
So this is
Obviously,
also
it's common enough to know.
Also,
Yeah.
that is what happened on the threshing floor.
Right.
That's what happened on the threshing
Somebody
floor.
should start
What
a club in
happens on the
Asheville called
threshing floor stays on the
Threshing
threshing
floor.
floor.
Do you know what I'm
I
saying?
think it
Wow.
probably did.
It's
but
the Vegas of Israel.
It is.
The old world.
Yeah. But so that being said, I think it's important to lay that foundation, that cultural foundation, not just for Israel, which because Hosea wouldn't have said that if that wasn't something that was even happening in
Yeah,
Israel.
they obviously all
But this
understood
is a common cultural practice. It's almost like when you make a joke about a bachelor party in this country, you automatically understand it means strippers and cocaine.
Exactly.
Right?
I didn't know about the cocaine
I
part,
didn't know
but
about
I
the
do about
cocaine
the
part.
strippers.
No, they come together.
Sorry. Or the strippers.
They come together rather nicely.
Well, so you
My husband didn't have that kind of party.
Ooh, this is
so-
me making
no,
a
my
face.
husband didn't either. Neither of my husbands did. I don't think. Andy, you were in charge of Brent's bachelor party. I don't remember. I think you guys played video games or
Well,
something.
yeah, it was nothing.
Yeah.
we were not that sort of partiers.
No.
No strippers and cocaine, huh?
No.
Well, maybe we optioned it and decided to sit around.
Video games.
Right, you decided not. You were like strippers and cocaine or playing video games in my
and
basement.
weed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, instead we recreated that 70s show, apparently. That's what it sounds
That's
like.
what it sounds like. I wasn't there. I wasn't invited.
Of course not.
I wasn't
It's
invited.
a bachelor party.
Yeah, exactly. But
Well, I think when you have this becomes a party where they're going to be drinking, alcohol does some things to our inhibitions. And so if there are women and men in the same area and their inhibitions are less than stellar at that moment, they're not in control.
Yep.
So typically you're going to have these things happen. And that's why you must be so very careful.
Yeah.
We don't have threshing floors, but we have other places that I, as a married woman, probably shouldn't go to and imbibe.
unless you go with your husband.
And imbibe alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so not to put myself in a situation where I would be
Vulnerable.
less inhibited
Mm-hmm.
and do something that would ruin my marriage. And it's just not, we have to be very careful. But obviously this wasn't a hard and fast rule here in the Bible.
Well, and one
story.
thing that's fascinating and that we're going to get into, because we're going to start reading chapter 3, and it gets spicy. This is one of those stories that I think should have like an NC-17. But
there's a couple of
I'm
them,
making
especially Old
a
Testament,
joke.
yeah.
I'm making a joke. The Hebrew Bible
I'm
is
not.
full. Yeah, the Hebrew Bible is full of stories and situations that, if we can approach them bravely, can find lots of direction for how we should behave today.
Mm-hmm.
And
Listen.
we can.
So I got saved at 25. I got married at 26. But in our counseling, I was a new Christian.
Mm.
And our pastor made us do the Song of Solomon, where he explained what the symbology meant. And I remember thinking, now, I wasn't a Christian until 25.
Mm-hmm.
So I had done things that were less than godly. We'll go with that.
I like that.
And I remember going, this is in the Bible? Oh my word. And I was
Yeah.
like flushed and embarrassed. I'm like, I had done things.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had not done
Yeah,
things.
you weren't new.
Biblical things.
But I knew carnality
Yeah.
in a real way.
Yeah.
And so when I was like, that's in the Bible, and I
Yeah.
go get my Bible, and sure enough, there it was. And I was like, oh, well, so when you go to church, does somebody, and I've never heard in my Christian life anybody preach on the Song of Solomon
Never.
from the pulpit.
I have.
Because it
Never.
is so controversial.
It's so
Well,
spicy.
you're
lucky.
You're lucky.
I am.
But I have.
I've heard people reference it only in reference to its spiritual metaphor, which is the
Yes.
love that God has for people. But you know what? We are missing an opportunity.
I've done a women's Bible study.
I've heard it.
There you
on
go.
it.
I've heard it preached twice
Yeah,
by men,
yeah.
and they were Latina missionaries, and they were talking about
They were men.
they were men,
The machismo.
and they were talking about the love for a man to a woman,
That would
and
be
the
Latino,
sexual and
not
erotic
Yeah.
love that is necessary in a relationship.
Yeah.
They
It's
talked
necessary.
about it. They did not shy away
And
from
from
the
it.
pulpit.
Andy,
From the pulpit.
Sarita's borrowing your Bible, yes?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had a chance to take a gander at it a whole heck of a lot. You should read the Song of Solomon so that you have a background on what we're talking about.
Okay.
It is a love poem
It's short.
between a man and a woman,
Uh-huh.
and it is racy.
Now, we talked about this.
Straight up racy, like describes body
The
parts
flocks
and
of
stuff.
Gilead.
Some of
and
the
goats.
greatest, like
Yeah.
one of my greatest pickup lines that I ever used came out of that book.
Can't wait for this.
Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn ewes.
Each one with its pair, right?
But, yeah.
You ain't missing no teeth, girl. That's hot.
You got buck teeth.
Your breasts
that
are like
just
a
came
pair
up
of
from its
something.
washing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
turtle doves or some
Turtle
nonsense.
doves,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, they never
And she
works.
talks about his cedar,
Funny.
and I don't think we have to translate that. His cedar tree. We don't have to translate that. I mean,
Goodness
It's amazing.
gracious.
it's amazing.
But I think that
That's
like,
funny.
it
like,
should also come with an NC-17 rating.
Yeah.
I'm going to preface this. We're about to jump into chapter 3, and we're going to read it line by line, and we're going to have a discussion.
Yep.
So wait, it just occurred to me that wood as a metaphor for a penis is thousands of years old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dude.
That's
But
amazing.
he called it
Sorry.
a cedar,
A cedar,
like a big cedar.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
which
Yeah.
was known in Lebanon as very tall trees.
Very
Yeah.
tall and strong
Giant.
trees.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm from the Pacific Northwest where
Yeah.
we have cedar trees. Yeah. Tall and strong and proud and thick, mind you.
Listen, I am from the place of scrub
Sorry,
pines.
I turned it back there.
I come from the place of scrub pines and red clay mud. So what does that tell you?
I don't know. We'll ask Holly later.
Please don't.
This-
No,
this-
they're not. You got to ask Holly later.
No. Okay.
Holly, you're off the hook.
Let's see. Let's jump in. Who? Now, what I'm reading is the HarperCollins Study Bible. It's the New Standard Revised Version. Would anybody like to kick us off with the
Sure.
reading somewhere
I am
else?
reading the New American Standard.
Okay.
So it's not the same as yours, but
Close.
we'll be close. How many verses?
Let's just get started let's read all the way down to 4. Or let's read all the way down to 6, excuse me. Verse 1 through 6.
Then her mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may go well for you? Now then, is Boaz not our relative, with whose young women you were? Behold, he is winnowing barley at the threshing floor tonight. Wash yourself, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. But Do not reveal yourself to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. And it shall be when he lies down that you shall take notice of the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will tell you what you should do. And she said to her, All that you say I will do. So she went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law had commanded her.
Y'all, I'm going to stop there and just say, I don't know any woman that would go to the club, for example, and not get herself all fancy and dressed up because her goal was to be attractive. Like her goal was to smell good, to look good, to be attractive. And the other issue is, because this may or may not be a good place to jump in if we talked too much about the Levirate marriage. So Naomi's goal here, when she says, because she says to her, some security. She means a husband. So the time has come in Naomi's eyes to approach Boaz for a Levirate marriage. That's why she mentions that he's a kinsman. But instead of approaching Boaz in the daytime as Ruth's handler, as it were, and saying to him directly, you and I are kin, let's talk about being a kinsman redeemer, she instead instructs Ruth to get dressed and get clean, which at this point, Boaz's only interactions with Ruth had been in the field, where she was likely sweaty and stinky. And so Naomi instructs her to get clean. And to anoint yourself with oil it's the ancient equivalent of cosmetics.
Right.
And to go down to the threshing floor and to just hang out for a while in an environment where the only pretty girls there were prostitutes.
Yeah.
And then wait until Boaz falls asleep and go and uncover his feet, and then he will tell you what to do. Discuss. What do you
She's basically okay, first of all, I think I see from the mother-in-law side of this, Naomi knows that she's not going to live forever. And if Ruth is left there without protection from someone, a family, something, she's going to be enslaved. She's going to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So she's coming from a place of love.
Absolutely.
But she tells her daughter-in-law to get herself into sort of a prickly position. You have to go wait till he's drunk.
Yeah.
He's full, he's drunk, he's slept, and go put yourself in a position where he has to redeem you if he can. And she puts herself out there.
Yeah.
And I get where Naomi's coming from, but I don't know this is the best. This is not the advice that I would give my daughter. Hey, would you go and just...
It's a bit of a risky plan.
Yeah.
It's a little bit.
Have you ever seen what whores do, honey?
I wish you podcasters could see my face, because I'm eyes wide being yeah, this is such an interesting story. And at this juncture, it's just the way that Naomi felt it necessary to create this kind of condition and these kinds of this picture. When in reality, but there's also there's a unique component here when it comes to the Levirate marriage. I'm just going to real quickly read about the Levirate marriage, which happens in Deuteronomy 25, verse 5. When brothers reside together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in to her, taking her in marriage and performing the duty of a husband's brother to her, and the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the deceased brother, so that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother's widow shall go up to the elders at the gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. If he persists, saying, I have no desire to marry her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and declare, this is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. Throughout Israel, his family shall be known as the house of him whose sandal was pulled off.
So if you remember, Andy, do you remember when we did our funny interlude and we talked about Onan and his wife? Remember, Onan's brother had died. And so what Onan's brother does, he goes and he has sex with her but then he pulls out. Remember, I said that was the first
Spills
pull
his
out.
seed on the ground,
Spills
yeah.
his seed on the ground. Well, so what was happening and why we laughed at it out of context because it was based on what she said in Deuteronomy 25. That was what was supposed to have happened. Is that she was allowed. She had rights. God gave that woman rights in this and said,
Yeah.
I'm going to spit in your face. This is what you won't do for your brother. Well, he didn't want to deal with that. So what he did was he had sex with her, but didn't give her the seed so he could avoid the embarrassment and all of that. So you know what happened?
What?
God just killed him on the spot. So
Yeah.
that's the Levirate marriage you're talking about.
It is. And so that's the Levirate marriage that we're talking about. Now, when we have two things at play when it comes to the study of the Hebrew Bible. We have Torah law, which is what we just read. And then we have the rabbinical law, which is how the rabbis kind of sussed out some of these things and made them larger and grander and bigger over time, which again is kind of one of the beefs that Jesus had when he came, was that the rabbinic law had kind of overshadowed Torah. But there's a lot to be said here. What if somebody doesn't have a brother?
Right.
What if, what if the brother's
brothers
already
died.
married? What if the brother's already married, but he's married to this woman's sister? Because sleeping with a woman's sister is, again, against the law. That's against biblical law. So, for example, if Orpah and Ruth had been sisters and Mahon had died and Chilion hadn't, it would have been, there are two laws here. Levirate law says you should marry her, but then Levitical law says you don't marry a woman's sister because it's going to just cause a bunch of strife. So the rabbis had created a bunch of other kinds
You
of
mean like
possible
Leah
ways.
and
Rachel?
Rachel, sorry.
Yeah.
They caused a lot of strife.
So much strife. And that's the other thing too. So the rabbis were like, okay, and again, when I say rabbis, these are over thousands of years. And we could reference the Babylonian Talmud. We could reference Josephus, who we talked about a number of times on the show. I think Mennonides was another like great Jewish thinker, another rabbi, where they kind of found out ways to take these laws and stretch them out and make them a little more applicable. But the fact remains that if Naomi had felt compelled to approach Boaz in order to enact this Levirate marriage, she had a precedent. Just go and just ask. And the precedent is, if he refuses, he's going to be humiliated in front of all of their culture and society. And of note, inheritance laws were such that the reason a brother might choose to not follow through with the Levirate marriage is that if he gave that woman a firstborn son, that firstborn son was going to inherit his dead father's property. But if there was no son and there was no one to inherit, then the next brother would inherit the property.
Right.
So some brothers, and there would have been a challenge potentially within the Jewish nation and within Israelite culture, where a greedy brother would have not wanted to enact the Levirate marriage because he had his eyes on his brother's property and would rather inherit it. So that's why this woman had the right to shame and humiliate him in front of everyone if he chose not to do it. And so, but we run into things where the cultural shame possibly wouldn't have been enough to overcome it. So the rabbis kind of came up with these other, they also had different
Avenues.
interpretations of, for example, when two brothers live together. Some rabbis preach that if they lived in the same town, so if the other brother lived in a different town, then another relative could redeem her. Or if they interpreted live together as alive at the same time. So if the other brothers were dead, then another relative could redeem her. They had to kind of stretch it out a little bit. And so that's kind of what they're referring to here, because Boaz is not a brother. He's a quote unquote kinsman redeemer by rabbinic law. But not necessarily by Torah law, because he's not a brother.
Right. And I feel this, like there's an undertone here too, because Naomi, obviously, let's talk about men and women. Let's just be real. I mean, men and women, a woman who dresses up and smells good is incredibly attractive, and I totally get it. But see, Boaz was a cool dude. Like we learned that earlier in chapter 2. He was really good with Ruth. Like he treated her really well. And but he wasn't married. He wasn't married yet. And so this is a man who works, who is honorable. All those ladies on the threshing floor are going to be trying to get after that, don't you think? I mean,
Sounds like a catch.
I imagine
he's a catch.
Boaz had probably been dealing with that for quite a
And
long
I think
time.
that's right. And they come in right at this right moment. And Naomi says, all right, look, he's been kind to you in the dirt. Let's see how he is with you when you're on the threshing floor.
Does he treat her like a prostitute?
Ooh, y'all, let's Let's read.
Let's get in.
Let's read, because that's actually, I don't know. I mean,
It doesn't match.
but
it doesn't match
let's keep
his
reading.
nature.
Well,
Let's keep reading.
before we move to the next part, I also wonder from Naomi's point of view, we always see this through Ruth and Boaz, but from her point of view, was this her only power? She had lost everything in a foreign country, had to move back. How traumatic was that? She lost all the property because
It would
there
go
was
by
nothing.
husband, right?
Yeah, there's nothing there in where she was living. She had to come back home, tail between her legs. Did she feel like her only power was subterfuge?
Yeah. I think she probably did. And in reality, it might have been. It's sort of
Could
like.
she actually approach
Did she have the power? Yeah.
The rabbinical powers that be? She could not do that.
No,
without
she
a
would have been
husband.
She would have been taken care of as a widow.
But they weren't doing
There
that
was
either.
nobody to take care of her.
No, but the point is that she could have called, like, in other words, if we were talking about law, that's where I
Yeah.
was heading. Like she would have been taken care of as a widow.
Yeah.
And that because God took care of widows and orphans, and that's what he commanded his people to do. And so when she comes back, she's got this daughter-in-law with her too. So I don't even know if it's subterfuge. I think she's smart, and I think she said, all right, look, if we're going to get a chance with him, and I'm going to give you security. She wasn't worried about herself, but in the back of her mind, she knew how dedicated Ruth was to her.
Yeah.
So she's trying to take care of the family because no one is going to redeem Naomi.
Yes.
She's
And
beyond that. That's why she's
past
bitter.
redemption.
and
Isn't
that
that the
hurts your
saddest
heart,
words?
doesn't it?
Isn't that the
Past
saddest
redemption.
Only,
isn't that the
only in
saddest
man's
words?
eyes, but not in God's.
In the law.
Yeah,
She's
but that's
past
what I
redemption, but
mean.
not in grace.
So I get goosebumps when you said that, because that's exactly the picture that's being painted here.
That's
a woman
right.
that is beyond redemption.
Yes.
And in reality, unless you, for me, because I carry in my body the identity of female.
Yeah, and all the feels that come with it.
I feel it viscerally when
Yeah.
I think about the situation that Naomi was in.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we're going to get into it. There actually was property that if Naomi could have found a way to redeem it, because she didn't have a husband's right to that land.
That's right.
If she could found some way to redeem it, she could have had sustenance. But it was over there, and she needed an advocate.
Yeah.
She needed a go-between to get to that promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And Ruth was her answer. So she's kind of cooked up this interesting plan. And to me, it gives big Esther vibes, because Esther was also in an impossible situation that she had no power to control.
And
Speaking
I
of
think
that,
when
by
you
the way,
said-
this is
Go ahead.
the Feast of Purim.
Yes. When you think, when you said Ruth,
Yeah.
like I totally agree with that. But I think it's Ruth and Boaz she sees Ruth and Boaz as getting her to that place.
Yeah.
She's got to go through the kinsman redeemer. She
And
has to.
she does.
So
And-
Ruth is her way, but it has to be through Boaz.
Right. And what's fascinating too is in her desire to redeem, again, it's this loving, beautiful relationship. It's both her desire to redeem Ruth from her fate, because again, like you said, once Naomi passed away, she was older than Ruth, at least by 20 years, at least.
Yeah, minimum.
Once Naomi was gone, Ruth would have no protection
No, especially as
in
a
a
Moabite.
lawless land,
As a
especially
Moabite?
Moabite, especially in the period of the Judges, which was a politically and religiously very tenuous time.
Yeah.
So, but in her desire to protect Ruth, she's also protecting herself, because you love your neighbor as yourself. And when we lift one another up, a rising tide lifts all boats,
Yeah.
So it's the way that also her redemption is just inexorably tied to Ruth's redemption.
And another thing too.
It's such a complex interweaving of relationships that is unique to manless women in that period of time.
I love whenever Sarita said subterfuge, it really kind of
Yeah.
stuck in my brain, and I was like, I don't know if that's the way. And then go ahead, Andy. What were you going to say?
I was thinking that subterfuge is kind of a value judgment, and it may not, like the fact that it happens at night, but it may not have been seen.
Yeah, and I totally see
Or
where she's
thought of
coming.
it that
I see
way.
where you're coming from, Sarita, on that. Like I totally do. I'm one of the things that I love about the relationship between Ruth and Naomi is that Naomi never lies. Naomi is so brutally honest with Ruth.
Dude, she's straight up.
And so when she says, all right, I want you to start looking good, do you think Ruth didn't understand what Naomi meant?
She was a Moabite, son. She knew exactly what she
knew
meant.
what was up. She done one. She either had Malon and Chili, and I don't know which one she Netflixed and Chili on with.
Yeah,
But
right. But here's the
That
other
was good,
thing.
huh?
Here's the other thing. She was a Moabite. She knew all about prostitution on the
Absolutely
threshing
she
floor.
did.
That was what her culture was doing.
That's right.
She knew that's what Naomi was asking her to do.
Yep.
But
Did
whether
she
or not
get her
the deed got
husband that
did,
way?
she did. But
Did she? Maybe.
that's the
Her
question.
first husband. Sorry.
Possible.
Not-
The
Oh,
son
did Ruth
of
get her
Naomi?
first husband that way?
We don't know.
Girl, that's a good question. See, that's the thing. I'm fascinated with what would have been Ruth's history. Was her family dead? Is that why she was so attached to Naomi? Did her mother die at a young age? And so she had this like trauma. And so Naomi filled a deep wound, soothed a deep wound in her heart. Like there is a very specific reason why this woman would have abandoned her own home, her own culture, her own people, her own ways, and travel with this other woman in like the period of the Judges was like 1000 BCE, 1200 BCE.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous time in history.
And just for fun, I just got to say this just because it's in my heart. If you can think about how small and insignificant this one tiny little Moabite woman would be in the realm of history, where she fits, like grain of sand small, yet she is the one that's going to carry the promise. Boom!
It's awesome.
Am I making you cry, lady?
It's making me get a little emotional. I'm also postpartum.
If you
so,
feel like you're
know,
insignificant,
could
be
down.
surprised.
You'd
Don't
be
be surprised
the
at what
Lord's
God can do
plan.
with you. Wow.
What were you going to say, Sarita?
I also have this question. She married a Jewish man with Orpah, who Oprah was named after, by the way.
Just misspelled wrong?
Yeah, her parents misspelled it on her birth certificate, and that's how she got her name. She was supposed to be Orpah, not
Oh,
Oprah.
I didn't
She
know
told that on her show many years ago. I'm old enough to have watched
I
the show.
remember that.
So, anyway, would she have had to convert to Judaism to marry him? You're more of a scholar than I am, like as far as you've been to divinity school. I mean, I read my Bible, but would she have had to convert to Judaism?
That is another argument. So I brought a really fascinating book with me that I've been reading. And I have this. I brought it right here. Let me just shuffle my ish around.
And once you get that, I have an opinion on that.
And so this book is written by a man named Israel Drazen. It's called Unusual Bible Interpretations. This particular book is the series that covers Ruth, Esther, and Judith. So Israel Drazen was a top military. He was like a general in the United States military for 1,000 years, like his whole career. He's also a PhD. He's a Jewish man. He's a PhD in psychology and a PhD in theology. So he's highly studied. He was actually critical and one of the critical voices in the fight to preserve the chaplaincy within the United States military.
Really?
They wanted to get rid of it. And he was like, no, you need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a good dude. And he, this book it's broken down by issue, and he's compiled what different rabbis, because all we really have is what the rabbis would have said. And that's a big question. You know, did Ruth convert? And he says, we saw that many rabbis insisted that Ruth, or perhaps even Orpah, had converted to Judaism in their land, although the rabbis do not agree on when this occurred. There are good reasons to think that the concept of conversion did not exist during her time and was introduced later. So until then, the Israelites thought of themselves as a nation, not a religion. People could join the Israelite nation simply by marrying an Israelite or deciding to be an Israelite and live in that nation. It was much like the naturalization process today, except far easier. There was no paperwork or legal requirements. So that's the argument at the beginning of that chapter. And then he goes in and he outlines different rabbis and different thoughts about that. So there is some suggestion that their identity, back to ancient Near East, the way that Israel's religious and civil law kind of intertwined is unique. So, and within that period of time, a person's national identity dictated what deities they worshiped because deities were tied to land specifically. So what he's saying is, we don't know if Ruth converted. A lot of people suggest that her declaration of that, where you go, Father, I'll be my God, that was her conversion. But
it doesn't even sound like it was a concept.
The requirements for that come much later in the law. And so it's not really, that didn't exist.
The question may not apply
in a weird way. So the question then
way.
becomes, did she become Israelite by marriage? Because in this period of time, the period of Judges, because like I said, this is like 125 BCE, is early in their history. Like, she would have married in and become an Israelite by naturalization. except, like we discussed in Deuteronomy, they were not to include a Moabite unto the 10th generation. And we're about to, at the end of this book, read the genealogy. You can count it. It wasn't 10 generations.
No, it was not.
So,
Like you said, God does what he wants to do.
Right. So and the other part of that story is if Naomi and if Ruth had converted, both either when she married an Israelite the first time in Moab or when she made that gorgeous declaration, if she had converted, then why do the writers of Ruth consistently refer to her as a Moabite? They never refer to her as an Israelite. They never refer to as a part of the nation. They never give her any other name except a Moabite consistently all the way to the end, even after she marries Boaz.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. I don't have a dog in that fight, but there has never been a genuine consensus from either party about whether or not Ruth ever converted. And it's just like our conversations on preterism and our own conversations around eschatology. Some people think she converted when she married Malhan. Some people think she converted when she made the declaration. Some people think she converted when she married Boaz.
Yeah.
And some people think she never converted at all because that wasn't even a thing in their culture yet.
Because you've fallen into the forever trap of conversations about things like this, which is, what do you mean by converted?
Right.
And I think, for me,
What do you mean by work?
Yeah, what do you mean by work?
this is just opinion. I'm speculating here, but first of all, in my opinion, I don't think that she converted whatsoever. I don't think that the family, when they came to Moab, even cared to follow the law because they were marrying Moabites. So that
Which was not uncommon in the period of the Judges.
No, it was not, because they were doing what was right in their own eyes.
Yeah.
But the law had already been written. The
Yeah.
law was already there.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
this is after Joshua.
Yeah.
So the law was already there. So everything had been written in regard to this. They just weren't following it. They were doing what was right in their own eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So Elimelech leaves with his wife Naomi and and his two sons, and he goes to Moab during this famine. And so they've left the house of bread, Bethlehem, and they're gone from it, and they've moved on, and they're marrying into Moab, they're living in Moab, they're not acting like Jews. So if you think about like the parable of the prodigal son, you have two sons really that are at home, and the one that says, "Give me my inheritance now," and he goes off to a far land and he lives riotously and he loses everything, and a famine hits, and then he's eating the husks of the swine. And what does he say to himself? Man, my servants got it better than I do. So I'm going to go back home and I'm going to be a servant, right? So when he gets back, the father doesn't allow him. So I see Naomi similar. So the son is thinking, I want to be a servant, and he knows. So I think of Naomi the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I see Naomi as like, I have nothing here and I'm gone. And Ruth doesn't have anything either, obviously, because she's leaving her homeland and she's going with this woman. So it's pretty obvious when you look at the story that she doesn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
But she still loves her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law loves her. And so when they get back, and I don't want to sidetrack this any further than I already have, but when they get back, Naomi is now re-entering back into her Jewness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Yep,
She's
absolutely.
been gone for years, and she's coming back in. She knows the Levirate marriage law, but Ruth does not, which means Ruth was never taught.
Right.
So therefore, Ruth had never converted. In my mind, she would have known.
Yeah.
So do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're
She
saying.
could have said, "Hey, Mom, how about this? Can't we do this because the law says such and such?"
Right. There was no argument.
There was.
And that was why my God be your God, my people be my people. What she's saying is, I'm going into a strange land where I don't know anyone, but what you tell me is pleasing to your God, I will do.
That's
what you
right.
tell me is pleasing to the gods that rule your land, I want to be pleasing to that God so that I don't bring curses on you, but only blessings. Whatever you tell me to do, that your God says to do, because that's what we're talking about. Everybody was ruled by the gods at this point.
Yeah.
And so she was acknowledging she was moving into a land that had a different God, a God she did not know, a God she had not interacted with, but she wanted to please, and she was depending on Naomi to tell her how to do that.
And that's exactly what Naomi is doing.
And that's exactly what she's
like,
doing.
Start smelling good, girl.
Girl,
and go
put
lay down on the threshing floor.
good panties. Put on the matching set.
Or just leave them at home.
Yeah.
No, Andy. Sir.
Yeah.
That's
they're
not
threshing
sanitary.
barley over there, bro. So there's got to be some,
Yeah.
there's some barley something to
There's
cover
something
yourself.
going on. So I want to hear about what Boaz does.
Yeah.
I do want to add in that I didn't have an opinion on that. It was just a question I wanted to put out there, but I actually do have an opinion on it. The fact that she is a Moabite woman,
Yeah.
and she's referred to that way, makes her redemption even more poignant.
It does to
Because
us.
I am a Moabite woman. Technically, I'm not a Jew.
That's
so my redemption should have been not.
You're a Congolese woman.
That's right.
I'm Caucasian Congolese.
Congolese.
I'm inventing a new thing.
I love it. All right, so I'm going to keep reading. So we just read down to verse 6. We're going to read the rest of this because there's so much to discuss here that I think we'll have lots to dive into, but let's read the whole thing so we know exactly where we're all going. All right. Verse 7. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in a contented mood, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you are next of kin." He said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask, for all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman. But now, though it is true that I am a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. Remain this night, and in the morning, if he will act as next of kin for you, good, let him do it. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then, as the Lord lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until the morning." So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another. For he said, "It must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor," because it doesn't look good. He wants her to avoid the walk of shame.
Yeah. I'm
trying to-
fascinated that he's
Sorry.
like,
He's putting her away privily,
Yeah.
just like Joseph was going to do Mary.
Yeah. Very quietly so that she won't be humiliated. Right.
Men with some serious, like,
Honor.
legitimate honor.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Then he said, "Bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out." And so she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. Then he went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, "How did things go with you, my daughter?" Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, 'Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" She replied, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today."
Boom.
Boom. So
You got to know. You got to love the wisdom of Naomi, man.
there's some interesting issues here.
yeah, he's like,
I wonder what Ruth was up to before she uncovered his feet and laid, because she was mixing and mingling.
Yeah.
She had to. If she was not, she was hiding behind a pillar. So she waits until he's asleep, and then goes and lays down. But then he doesn't know
You are so close to something. I'm telling you, you have picked up on something that I never imagined I would hear in the studio, and you picked up on it. What was she doing before she got in his room?
She was being I don't know.
They were partying. But listen,
they were hanging out.
Boaz,
She's a woman of excellence.
Boaz-
my
That's the
translation.
thing.
Boaz gives you a clue. He gives you a clue as to what she was doing earlier in that evening.
She was
And-
participating, but
And he
not.
saw her. He
Yeah.
saw her. Do you know how I know that?
how do you know?
How do you know?
Because he says, "You didn't go with the young men."
Yep.
Oh, I got you.
How old is
I got
Boaz?
you. Well, we don't know. We assume
He's not a young
old.
man.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
not a young man. Otherwise, you didn't go for the other young men. He didn't say that. He said, "You didn't go for the young men." How would he know that? Because she was with him. I think he saw her. I think they were all in revelry and doing their thing.
Yeah.
And he probably noticed her like, "Oh, that's the girl that I saw in my fields."
So here's the thing.
That's speculation at best.
Now, speculation. I'm going to just preface this next comment with all of that. She went and uncovered his feet, but then he didn't remember. He woke up a couple hours later. I think she approached him, and I think they had sex. But I think she didn't drift off. I think she stayed there next to him. And at midnight, when he was like, "Whoa, you're still here. What are you doing here?"
You should split.
Then she's like, "But it's me, it's Ruth." And that is the moment that I think his heart, because just like Judah and Tamar, she was using the sex only because she wanted to fulfill the Levirate law, which was honorable.
Are you sure within the context that they could have had sex? I don't think they can.
I don't know. But
I mean, I understand where you're going.
Speculation,
Judah and
right?
Tamar, you can use it that way. It wasn't. Yeah, I see
also
where you're going.
prostitution on the threshing floor.
I
That's what
get
she
it.
was there for.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm wondering, and I don't know. I'm just wondering.
I think our attitude towards sex is probably a little bit different than theirs was, judging by all the context I see in the Bible. I do not think that they were as, what's the word? Protestant about, you know what I mean?
Well,
puritanical.
Puritanical as we are. I really don't. But it seems way more common and out there to me.
And plus, also, this is the environment of the threshing floor. That's what
right.
everybody
That's what's
did.
happening. Yeah.
Number two, these people aren't spring chickens. They're not kids.
No.
She'd been married before. It's not like sex wasn't something she was familiar with. But what I think, it's a little bit to me, and Sarita, I see you want to pop in. Okay, because I want to hear. This is just an opinion. I don't know. But to me, when you see things like, for example, Esther having to spend the night with the king, they weren't playing Scrabble.
Right.
But God was able to anoint that night such that he remembered that woman by name.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's possible that Ruth did this thing, but then when Boaz realized that what she was doing was trying to do the faithful and honorable thing, he was floored by her. And when he says to her that you are, let's reread that word, because that word that he uses shows up in Proverbs 31 when we talk about the perfect woman, right? When he says, it's in the notes down here.
Mine says she was a woman of excellence.
Yeah.
Yours had a different translation.
Worthy woman. So in 3:11, when he says, and now my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for all you ask. My people know that you are a worthy woman, excellent woman. That word in the Hebrew, eshet she'al, it's the same word used in 31:10. So Proverbs 31 woman, about a woman who's loyal and faithful and excellent. Because if she was utilizing sexual subterfuge, like you were saying, she wasn't using it to try and ensnare him. She was using it to try and fulfill the honorable and righteous law. Because you're right, she could have run off with one of those other young men, but she didn't. She followed through with Boaz because that was the righteous and honorable thing to do in order so that her dead husband's name would not be blotted out of Israel and Naomi would be taken care of.
And it's also she was still following the promise she made to Naomi. I'm going to go and do what you tell me to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a different opinion.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't think that they had sex that night. Mm-hmm. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
Well, I was.
Okay, but I'm older than you, so it can't be.
No,
yes, I am. We discussed this in the last one. I'm 49 years old.
You look like you're 36.
Well, you're sweet. Okay, so
I'm
I think
serious.
she was out there eating and drinking, as everyone else was, flirting. Okay. But
having
then
a good time.
Everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, you're letting the hair out.
The threshing floor. What happens on the okay? So
Yeah.
she's out there having a good time. She has a goal in mind, and it's Boaz.
Yep,
Not anybody else. She's following Naomi's orders.
that's good.
And so Boaz eats, he drinks. We don't know if he frolics, but he passes out because that's what you do on the threshing floor. It says she secretly, my version says secretly, yours said something different.
Stealthily.
But stealthily. She secretly went while he was passed out and laid at his feet, uncovered his feet, laid at his feet. And then he wakes up, and mine says he bends down. So he sits up and then he kind of bends over and is startled that she's there. Like, he's surprised. So had they had sex and she was there, I don't know that. So this is my opinion there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
she says who she is. And she says, she tells him why now. You are my redeemer. You are my redeemer kinsman. And he says, okay, I'll do whatever you want me to, whatever you say. But there's another who has claim over you before me. I'm going to go see him in the morning.
I thought that was real interesting too.
Okay,
It's like,
so-
I'll do it. I'll do it. Sure. But let's see.
Well, he
you
wants
know?
to do things
He has to follow the Levirate law.
He has to.
Okay, so it's
You
about
have to.
so it's about law. I thought he was
Because
very laissez
not-
faire about it. I was like, all right,
But my thought was
laissez. Sorry.
that he didn't take it. He could have, now at midnight, they could have done the thing.
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
Just get it over with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he knew, he had already done a little research. He knew that there was somebody else who had claim over her.
Oh, that's a good
he
point.
did not have sex with her because that child would have then been his, and the Redeemer would have claimed him for the brother of the way back when, whatever.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
There's where I think they didn't have sex. Because he already knew.
He's a man of honor.
He's a man of honor. He calls her a woman of excellence.
Yeah.
He's a man of honor.
Yeah.
And he says, there's someone else. I saw you in the fields.
Yeah.
I thought you were pretty all sweaty and dirty, which
Yeah.
is that not the romantic thing?
It's adorable.
You were precious to me when you were nasty. Okay?
It's adorable.
And so,
Girl, you nasty.
but
I like it.
does Jesus not say,
Yes.
my child, you were precious to me even when you were filthy,
Yes.
dirty,
Yes.
stinky, rolling around on the threshing floor? You were precious to me.
Yeah.
And she was precious to him.
Yeah.
He had done his research. Am I her redeemed? I think he already had this plan going on. And so I think when she shows up, he's like, okay, God, I see you. I hear you.
Yeah.
I know you're speaking to me. I've got to go make this right.
Yeah.
Ruth, I'm going to get out of here before people see you.
Yeah.
And your reputation gets sullied because you currently have a reputation of being a woman of excellence, a worthy woman.
Yes.
Get out of here, run away, take all this food and go. And so I think that disproves the fact that he didn't have sex with
And
her.
it also points back to just how good Naomi is, because when Naomi sends Ruth initially and Ruth starts to follow these specific things and she's a Moabite, how would she know?
Yeah.
It kicked in old Boaz's brain and he started like, wait a minute, I recognize something. This is old school law. These people are doing whatever they want around here, but this is old school. This is law talking right here.
I love, and I never noticed that you could have gone after a younger man. Now, it's also possible that he means you could have tried to marry someone else. But again, her identity as a Moabite kind of put her in terms of into an outcast. I just love this idea that it's like my favorite high school movie where the nerdy gross girl, and I say favorite high school movie because like all of them do this.
Yeah,
where
Can't Buy Me Love or yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Princess
Or like
Diaries.
Princess Diaries. Pretty Woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that one, but I was like,
where you take a thing.
Big mistake.
Huge.
yeah.
Yes. That she shows up now in her glory, in her feminine glory. And he clocked her.
Yeah.
He did.
But she
Yeah.
caught his eye.
When she was
Gross.
gross. So can you imagine
How beautiful
what
she
she looked
actually
like to
was.
him? When she was clean. And it's like, isn't that just a picture of God's love for us? That he sees us when we're filthy in our own sin and doing things our own way and breaking laws and harming one another. And then what we must then look like to him once we're redeemed and washed clean.
Now, and also,
he loved us anyway.
Think about this. This is the appropriate time to do whatever you really want to do. You're partying, living it up. You're drunk. You can do whatever you want. Pretty much, like just do whatever you want. He's honoring God.
Yeah.
At midnight.
So
With this
As
hot
my mama
lady.
used to say, ain't nothing good ever happened after midnight. You better be home before midnight.
Right.
Yeah,
But he's
she
honoring.
was
happened
wrong.
after midnight. Yeah.
She was wrong in many, many ways. But I told my kids the
Yeah.
same thing. Ain't nothing good happening to you after midnight. Get home.
Get home, yeah. When you're under 18, you get your butt home. But here's the thing.
She was wrong. Oh man,
Andy
I love
Bishop.
In
it.
so many ways.
He is the
Yeah.
Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Picow.
She's
So-
passed on, so we'll leave it there.
I don't have an opinion. I think that your read, Sarita, is beautiful. I think that it could be I don't know what happened. It could be anything.
I wasn't there.
Yeah, I wasn't there. And I think that that's the kind of the beauty of the living word is that you're able to allow the Lord to use it to speak to you however it speaks to you. If you tell me that God made some chocolate chip cookies, I don't care if God just abracadabraed and they appeared, or if God went down into a kitchen and took flowers and eggs and
Right.
chocolate chips. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not attached to the stories being so 100% literal and factual that there's not room for the Holy Spirit to allow me to interact with that story in a way that blesses my heart and soul. Right? Because to me, it doesn't matter if God made the cookies or if God abracadabraed them.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a chocolate cookie.
Right.
And one thing that stuck with me was listening to a professor tell a story about how, and this makes me want to cry, Filipino Christian women that are in prostitution because that's their only option. they love the story of Ruth because they find such hope that maybe someday they will have the freedom from this occupation. And you know what? I love that. So if they think that she slept with Boaz and that she got redeemed, just like Jessica, Julia Roberts was the prostitute to Richard Gere, but it was the last time she ever had to do that. She got redeemed. If that's how it goes, then great. But if they didn't do it, it doesn't matter to me. Although I do think it's interesting. So the other reason why I think they may have two things. Number one, uncovering someone's clothes, like uncovering his feet, just like uncovered someone's nakedness. The uncovering of someone is often a euphemism for sexual interaction. And now other rabbis have stated that the word used for feet is only used a couple other times in the Bible. It's a weird word for feet. So other people are like, so that's not a euphemism for his penis. But other rabbis think that it is, that her uncovering his nakedness, uncovering him means that in like sort of a drunken revelry, maybe they'd had sex, but he didn't. But she, like the other prostitutes, would have wandered off, would have gone back home, maybe. But the fact that she stayed and spent the night, indicates that her decision to choose Boaz, like you were saying, of all these men, was more rooted in a desire for him than it was fame and fortune and riches. And that's what moved his heart, that she chose him. It was almost as if she had a specific desire for him, which is obviously a prostitute's going to sleep with wherever she's going to get the most money. But that was not her choice. And to reveal that she chose him in that moment was because, she wanted to be honorable toward Naomi. And so this just ignites his heart. Now,
well, the only thing she went home with was the stuff he put in her cloak.
Mm-hmm.
So if she had prostituted herself the rest of the night, where's the other stuff?
I don't think she did. That's what I'm saying. I think that, like Rick was saying, he saw her like flirting and being there and doing all the stuff, but she only chose Boaz.
Yeah,
She
Tiziana's
only chose
supposition is
Boaz.
not that she was the prostitute in general.
Yeah, I think that she was just making the picture, so he like Rick said, he could see her choosing who she wanted, but instead of choosing the one with the most money or the one that was going to be the youngest, i.e. probably the best time, she chose him, which indicates it wasn't just a decision about enjoyment or financial gain. She cared about him because he was the key to honoring God's law.
Yeah, I think that it's just, again, it points back to the Naomi. It's kind of like, have you guys ever seen A Beautiful Mind?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember whenever John Nash is working out his thesis and he can't quite figure out it and he's at the bar and then he sees the blonde and her friends?
Yeah.
And he creates this entire economic equation based off of how many people go for the blonde.
Yes.
But instead, he says, no, we all go for the friends. The blonde leaves, but everybody gets the business that night,
Right.
So Naomi, when she's telling Ruth, hey, let's get ready. You're going to the threshing floor. The point is that you're going to go to get Boaz, right?
Yeah.
So when you want somebody, a lot of times you might go and flirt with the other people to entice the one that's looking.
Yeah.
In other words, I think that Naomi could have told Ruth, this is how you work a room, or Ruth knew.
I bet Ruth knew.
I mean, she was a Moabite.
Yeah, and she wasn't new. She wasn't born yesterday.
Right. So I'm just saying that because he said you could have chose the younger men, I think that he knew, like he's looking at like, she's hot and she's going to get whatever she wants.
Yeah.
But he's already done some, like she said, Sarita picked up on, he's already done the research. So I
love that.
It is.
Yeah,
and
I
it's
think that's
powerful
fantastic.
to him because he's interested.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's almost like a hard to get kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, he wakes up and he's like, whoa, this hottie is right here.
Yeah.
But he still honors God and does not cross the line.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person.
The thing, and the only reason why I think, because there's two interpretations in the Bible, like in the Bible version that I just read, it says, what happened, and Ruth told him of all that had transpired, but other translations like of that word are all that he had done to her. And so there's ambiguity, and to me, the kicker is the emergency that Boaz then experienced. He will not rest until this matter is settled. Now, either he didn't sleep with her, perfectly fine, and was anxious to get this thing settled because he really wanted to, or he'd already slept with her unknowing.
And wanted to fix it.
And wanted to, because what was the law? She would have been, what would the law have stated?
They would have stoned her.
Right. But she was a Moabite, so maybe not, but it would have looked really bad. And so
she would no longer have been a woman of excellence.
No, she wouldn't have. So it's almost as if in his haste, just like Joseph and Mary, to not cause further harm, he was like, we need to get a marriage certificate like stat, because if we get married
or
later,
we need to get her out.
Then
he actually wasn't going to marry her. He was going to put her away. But
Joseph and Mary. No, I'm talking about both. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I'm just saying, like, a man that wants to do things the right way.
Yes.
Right. So it's possible that because he, like I said, the man will not rest until that matter is settled today. Where's the fire, Boaz?
Yeah.
Where's the fire?
In his loins.
Right? So that's it. Right? So those are the choices. So either way, they didn't sleep together. I just got goosebumps when you said that. It was so funny. Well,
when she heard loins.
In my pants. Well, that's also an old sketch from, that's an old In Living Color sketch. The two girls that are always like, where's the, in my pants?
I was thinking of the Golden Girls, where she talks about, have your loins ever been on fire? Well, of course they have, Rose.
So funny. I love that show. But so two things. Either, either way, there is no question in my observation, and I don't think even amongst the rabbis there is some question, because there are some that want to say, oh, when she clothed herself in her Sunday best, it was a euphemism for clothing herself in righteousness. When she clothed it, but to me, that's just a bunch of BS. That's a bunch of pearl clutchers that just can't like live in a real world with real dirty people.
She was decorating that tree.
She was decorating that tree because she wanted some presents.
With the star on top.
She was doing it. Yeah. So and Naomi coached her. So I like Rick's read that the idea was to work the room on purpose in front of Boaz, so that he could see her and be enticed by her.
Now, you did that.
Oh,
back in the day at the bar, you're like, okay, say something to make, because I laugh.
Do you think that
Exactly.
Why did I want to play in a band?
Exactly.
Was it because I love music so much, or is it because I wanted to get laid?
Dig,
because you wanted to lose money for an ongoing basis for years, on an ongoing basis for years.
Because I wanted to experience the crushing disappointment of loving my art more than anything, and listening to people have chats and conversations over me playing my music.
I sucked as a musician, but that didn't stop me from trying to make it.
Yeah.
That was my whole point. Was I wanted to.
You wanted the ladies.
I wanted the ladies.
Well, I was married. Brent and I were married.
Yeah.
And in a relationship before. I had to beg these boys to let me be in their band.
You didn't want the ladies?
No. Well, that's a whole other conversation. No, I'm just kidding.
So,
but that was that's a whole other conversation, because there's a lot. That was fun. But
this has been an awesome look at Ruth 3, man.
Yeah.
I've never had this kind of a conversation about it before.
Yeah.
Good
well, I'm
insight
excited.
on you guys.
This is the stuff I love talking about. I love getting into how do we translate this? How do we take these bones and put flesh on them that makes sense to us? And this is why in the previous episode, I said, if you know somebody who's in sex work right now, just love them where they are and don't be judgmental, because you don't know if God is actually working out her or his or their deliverance through the sex work. Because even though, this makes me cry. I'm so emotional. I just hormones. Even though Ruth walked in as a prostitute, she walked out as a wife.
Right. Yeah.
And that is the beautiful story of redemption. So you might know someone who is walking in as a prostitute right now. You pray for the Holy Spirit to cover them and protect them for sure. But you don't know how God is intending to walk them out as a beloved.
Yeah. It's
whose
really
value
easy.
is seen.
It's really easy to turn.
Yeah.
Can I read something out of Ephesians?
Yeah, and then I think we might want to wrap this one up, because I think it's been a little over an hour.
This would be a good way
Yeah.
to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And it's in Romans chapter 8, and this is something that Paul said, and it was making me think of Ruth.
But you said Ephesians.
Did I say Ephesians?
Yeah.
I'm in Romans. Did I?
Okay.
Did I say Ephesians?
You did.
This is in Romans chapter 8.
You can't get it by the edge. She'll hear.
Both of us women
sharp.
can't be wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Just ask our husbands.
It's a law. It's a law. It's a mathematical law. When two women are in agreement, it is impossible that they are wrong.
Something Paul says. He says, "Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will tribulation or trouble or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? Just as it is written, for your sake we are killed all day long. We were regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. But in all these things we overwhelmingly conquer through him who loved us." And then I love this part. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And he came through Ruth.
Amen.
Boom.
Amen. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up with that because I can't think of a better note to end it on. I hope y'all have a great month, and we'll see you next month on the Burrows of Berea, Notes from the Underground.
Peace out.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Hey guys, this is Rick from the Burrows of Berea. Do you know how much blood, sweat, and tears it takes to make a podcast? None. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't cost a lot. And so if you guys don't mind, if anybody would like to give to help us with these episodes, it would be great. We'll put out even more content. And if you go to our Patreon page, just search for the Burrows of Berea, you'll get extra notes, extra episodes, and it's pretty much free. $1 gets you a lot. Thanks, guys.
But the meme on top says, the meme on top of this picture of Nicolas Cage's just like raggedy busted face turning his head to the driver's side. He's in the passenger seat. Above it says me getting my family healthy for the first time since July. And then it cuts to Pedro Pascal who's driving and he's just got this like wild-eyed grin and it says my toddler who just licked the shopping cart handle. My 2.5-year-old quite literally licked the handrail at the Malvern Hills Park the other day. I was like, look, if you don't, I am not about to be dealing with Ebola on top of all this stuff. do you know who Lil Dicky is? Yeah, Lil Dicky's a rapper. He's a Jewish rapper, and he's amazing. But he does parody stuff.
Yeah,
and he's a part of this.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
There's a song that he's a part of, and it's called "She Ain't Fat, Bruh," and it's like she just a little thick, And it's this whole song that's in celebration. It's great.
I love it.
So is I like big butts and I cannot lie.
Hey, that song is actually really powerful because it came out in a period of time, where people were just like, you know what? There in the 90s, heroin chic was a real issue. And it was like Kate Moss was a real famous, supermodel.
Well, so was Twiggy in the 70s.
So was Twiggy in the 70s, right? And so there was this like celebration of being unhealthily thin.
Yeah.
And so that song came along. You know who else? Jennifer Lopez, because they wanted her to lose some booty in order to be
J-Lo.
Not J-Lo, but who did she?
Selena.
Selena. And she was like, no. And her body became a trope, and there were jokes about her big butt or whatever. But she stood in the gap for all of us thick girls and was like, no, you deserve to be seen.
Simultaneously in high school, I had 2 nicknames, Chicken Legs and Big Booty Judy.
Jeez.
I had both. I weighed about 100 pounds soaking wet, but I had a booty.
Woo! You know what?
And I still got the booty.
And the thing is,
you still got the booty.
That should have been celebrated.
That's all right. I would give anything to be called Chicken Legs right now.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm still called Big Booty Judy, but
I had a nickname. They called me Hicker. And, because I always got the hiccups like all the time in the most random places, like all the time. So they called me Hicker. And that was the only nickname I can ever really remember. It's kind of weird.
That is interesting.
Hicker.
It's a very weird name.
I feel like they could have done better.
I know.
I feel like they could have done
Hicker
better.
sounds like, hey, man. Hey, y'all doing all right,
Hicker.
man? Yeah.
Yeah, don't say it just wrong because it goes bad quick.
okay.